Good afternoon, everyone. This is the sixth episode of the In the Weeds podcast, where we talk about everything in the UK League of Legends esports scene. I'm your host, Water, and we will be talking to Unfazed today about his tenure in the UK scene and a little bit about who he is. Welcome, Unfazed. Would you like to introduce yourself a little bit and talk about what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Water, firstly. And I mean, yeah, my name's Unfazed. Also go by the name Adam in the scene. I've managed League of Legends teams, some very well, some poorly over the last couple of years on and off. I also do a little bit of casting where I cast with the UKL and lots of sort of amateur scene hotspots in sort of like the UK circuit. So yeah, no, I'm really happy to be on the show, man. Let's talk League and beyond.
Yeah, let's get to it. So, let's start with how you first got into League. What was like the story like first being introduced to the game?
Okay, so this is kind of crazy, but I'm not. This isn't a flex. It's more of a scary realization. But I
Okay.
consider myself like an OG MOBA player in the sense that when I was growing up, we used to go to an internet cafe in the middle of Swansea, and basically, they had Warcraft 3, the MOBA, and
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
or the RTS, sorry. And then all of a sudden, somebody's saying, "Oh, I've downloaded this. This is sick. Can you install it on your PC?" I do it. Next thing I know, I'm playing, Dota, the
Mm-hmm.
original, and it was just such a crazy game in the sense that it was no two games are ever the same. That is
Yeah.
it's true for a lot of games, but the variables are just so intense. And then of course, years and years went by. I did a bit of Dota, did a bit of Hon, and yeah, I just had this advert on literally the banner of a website, and it was just
Mm-hmm.
like, try this game for free, and I was like, oh my god, it's another MOBA. Little did I know that that was going to be the gateway click. And that was what, 16? Oh gosh, in the alpha of League. So yeah, I've been absolutely
Alpha
hooked
League.
since.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nuts.
So, what was it like starting in the Alpha of League? Because as myself, right, I started in end of season 7 ish around Zaya Rakan's release. So what was it like when there was only 40 champions? Am I right?
Yeah, I mean it was stripped back, but again, it's kind of strange because you have this warped remember, you kind of remember things better than they are. So
Mm-hmm.
like my memories of early League, if I watch the footage, I'd be like, "Whew, that looks rough." But in my
Yeah.
mind at the time, it was perfect. It
Mm-hmm.
was really fluid, MOBA, fast paced, and League of Legends really accelerated the MOBA genre. It was sort of like the cod of MOBA at the time versus like the long form Dota and Hon because they were like really, really.
Mm-hmm.
They had loads of mechanics like character turn, loads of line of sight with
Yeah.
forestry and such. It was just there were loads of difficult aspects to master. Whereas League of Legends was kind of just like you've got a blink which is insane. That would have been an OP thing in Dota, and everyone could
Mm-hmm.
just jump in it, smash into the lanes, and just go for gold. And that was just kind of it was quite freeing, and I think that's why League did so well because it kind of pulled in the audience who found Dota and Hon like really intimidating.
Yeah. So you think a massive part of the success was the more stripped back plug in and play kind of gameplay of League compared to the overwhelming numbers game of Dota, right?
Yeah, and I mean, there's numerous aspects to League that make it a more forgiving game. I.e.,
Hmm.
when you die on Dota, you lose gold, and you can literally be like
Yeah.
trapped on an item for the whole game. You literally have the deny mechanic in Dota as well, where
Mm-hmm.
CS and experience can be denied. So not only you can't just lose a game in Dota, you can lose your levels, you can lose gold, you can get outplayed in way more ways on Dota in that sense, but. Yeah, that's not to say League is an easier game because you can get outplayed in many ways. But from a startup point of view, I think the entry level is way lower than some of the scary MOBAs in my opinion.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you played Dota, but you also mentioned another game, and I'm not too familiar with it. Do you wanna explain a little bit what that is?
Yeah, so basically, Heroes of Newerth was kind of the halfway point between today's Dota 2 and the sort of Warcraft mod. So it was like the
Yeah.
first one. It was cool. It had a lot of characters with abilities which Blizzard definitely have taken care of in a brutal lawsuit. I'm aware.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was basically, yeah, it was a nice because obviously all of the IPs were linked to Warcraft 3. So the hook mechanic on Pudge, which was Devourer in Horn, and there were loads of identities that they had to change. But it was just a good, yeah. It was basically, if Dota on Warcraft 3 was like version 1, then that was point 0.5, and then Dota 2 was like the second iteration.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
Okay.
like the halfway point.
Okay.
It's a cool game. Got
Yeah.
released.
So beyond just the MOBA genre, what originally got you into video games as a person? Was there any like childhood games you remember fondly?
Oh man, well I mean, I loved gaming the whole time. At 5 years old, I got an N64 and Mario Kart, and it was kind of like when Christmas came around, we'd all have like we were big on the 4 controller gameplay as well. Like my dad,
Yeah,
my
yeah,
brother, my uncle would be on there, and it was just like that was just how I was sort of raised to. I don't know. That was it was like Christmas was, oh my god, like PlayStation, let's all grab a controller and let's play the next game. And it was just like it became sort of the focal point. And of course, gaming evolved to me, and it was more like me versus online eventually. When I played Counter Strike, was my first ever PC game. I got a PC to play Counter Strike,
yeah,
and yeah, man. I mean, as we all know, it's a slippery slope. You start
yeah,
playing online
yeah,
games, and there's no real slowing it down. And yeah, I mean, ultimately, League of Legends accelerated rapidly for me. I had I had an injury in my lower back, and I was kind of loosely bedbound for like 4 years. And for the period, I basically found a way to play League. Granted, I typed using the on-screen keyboard, but for the most part, I could
yeah,
function.
yeah.
And yeah, I got helplessly addicted to League through boredom alone, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's where I got my like highest ranks, and I really got
Yeah.
really into it. So yeah, no, League in a way helped me. So it's been a
Yeah.
good game in that sense as well. Yeah,
Yeah,
very true.
I feel like that's a common thing. A lot of people say that League or other video games in general have really helped them through like tough periods of their life where maybe they can't do these social activities they want to do normally with their friends, right? So
100%, 100%.
I was gonna, so a little bit about you. You played Mario Kart. You played all these like party games with your family towards like Christmas, right? Were you the competitive child? That's the real question.
It's really strange. I never had I've never been sort of like an in-house competitive guy, and whenever we played with like friends and stuff like that, I'd always pick like the easier stuff. I'd never really go for like the kill. But
Yeah.
online versus like strangers, I absolutely am determined to ruin as many days as I
Yeah.
can. Yeah, it's
So
strange, man. But yeah, no, I'm quite chill in that
yeah.
sense.
So do you think that this competitive drive you got from playing against random people online has like led you into the competitive scene as a whole? Would you say or
100%. Because I mean, anybody who's done, let's say, five-a-side and they've gone to 13-a-side football and
yeah,
they've done Sunday league, at some point that might slow down, as it did for me. I had responsibilities that slowed down my solo queue, did loads of things, and I sort of thought, well, I've enjoyed my time try-harding 24/7. But then you're kind of looking for the next best thing, and amateur league and pro scene is the next thing. You'd always tune
yeah.
in to watch the football and stuff like that, just the same way I tuned in to watch every sort of scene that I was interested in. And yeah, that's 100% why. Competitive nature doesn't die. You just have to get your fix from another avenue, and it
Yeah.
just so happened to be UCal and LPL, LCK, and all that stuff.
Oh, that's lovely to hear. So we've yapped a lot about your past, but what about your current? What are you doing currently? What is your
Yeah, I mean, currently we've we've got a band. I've got a band of guys together, and we're currently playing in the Benelux League. We are in a Division 3 qualifying window at the minute, and I mean, it's more of a case of I don't think we're an esports team per se. It's more of a collective currently that with the want for competitive
yeah
aspects, and it's really fun. Look, losing hurts the same as any other day,
yeah
but
of course
for the most part, it's nice to be in a position where I can help people on League of Legends lock in and sort of enjoy playing at a competitive level, because it is quite intimidating for somebody who is straight out of solo queue, and they want to have a home, or they want to have a team where they can
Yeah.
really develop.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to facilitate that and make sure that everybody's in a good spot. I'm a very vibe based sort of like team manager, I guess. I
Yeah.
want everyone to like be
Mm-hmm.
on super high energy when we're playing. So yeah, I mean, outside of that, then I cast League, so that's something that's gone crazy. I
Yeah.
blew my ACL last December, so
Mm-hmm.
literally my knee snapped in half, which is crazy. But every silver lining, I'm into casting now, so I've been doing work with the
Yeah.
UKL, and I've enjoyed every
Mm-hmm.
minute of that, bro. Like these guys are super talented people, and I feel really lucky that I'm amongst
Yeah.
them. And I've casted other leagues as well. I've done a bit of Benelux, I've done a bit of CWL, Valence League, and also there's another league I did, which I don't remember the name of, but it was equally important, I'm sure.
It was
But
competitive.
yeah, it was competitive. So yeah,
Yeah.
man, I'm having a blast. I'm having
Yeah.
a blast.
So, what accomplishments have you had on managing these teams, or even some of your casting accomplishments? Would you say that you've had?
I mean, I think one of the greatest moments, or one of the two greatest moments from, if I was to split the question in two. So casting,
Yeah.
I casted the grand finals of the Division Two on my
Mm-hmm.
first split with the UKL,
Yeah.
which was super amazing. And I was like, wow, guys, thank you so much for trusting me with that. And and I had loads of great feedback from that.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually attended the grand finals in person for the Div One. And yeah, it was just so good to network. Because it's strange. When you play on the computer and such, you kind of distance yourself from what this does for people.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing two teams travel all the way to London to really duke it out, and the energy in the room, the camaraderie. Just I met people that I would never have met purely through League Online, and
Yeah.
it does cement why it's all happening. It's a super important part of the amateur scene, what the UKL does, and we really have to
Mm.
promote that kind of scene so that talent finds its way to the top and they can really show off what they've gained on
Yeah.
League.
So, just before you answer the second part of the question, let me pick your brain a little bit about how it feels as you to cast the finals of Div 2. Even though it's not Div 1, it's still a big step, and especially as you said in your first split. How does that feel to you? And was there any like nerves going into it, and like how did you manage that?
Honestly, I don't think there was any nerves. It was more a case of I've kind of I feel my comfort's built week on week with casting, and it was just a really I was flattered because when it comes to a tournament, it works along, and no final is accidental. These
Yeah.
teams have put weeks and weeks and weeks and months potentially pre-tournament into this, and it's all about giving them the representation through the cast that they deserve, because like they're medal winners. We're talking gold and silver. This is a really
Yeah.
big event, and
Mm-hmm.
division is completely unrelated from it. It doesn't take away from the effort and such. So yeah, I was more dialed into making sure these guys could click on that VOD and go, oh my God, yeah, and not mute up and just
Yeah.
think, yeah, I love this cast. This represents what was going on, because one day, it could be 20, 30 years. This could come up in a conversation. They'd be like, oh, I've got this. Watch this, right? When I was back in my day, I did League of Legends, and
Yeah.
my cast has to be time proof. It's got to be like, they've got to be proud of my work forever, really. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's great.
I mean, from general sentiment that I've seen around the finals casting, everyone was praising you for your amazing casting. So congratulations on that, by the way. That's massive,
Very much,
especially
yeah.
within your first split.
Yeah,
So
it's
so we've talked about your casting, right? So what about a little bit about the management? What was your number one like accomplishment as a manager?
I think probably when I was with I was in the CWL splits, and we did sort of a back-to-back first place finish.
Hmm.
Granted, it was in the lower divisions. It wasn't in sort of like their apex division, but it was just, I don't know. I just like the fact that we got a result. Granted,
Yeah.
it wasn't like NLC finals. Don't get me
Yeah,
wrong, but
yeah, but
it was enough. Yeah, it was
yeah.
enough, and it, and it's I sort of I live vicariously through the team in their sort of excitement and such. I'm hopelessly
Hmm.
attached to teams when I
Yeah.
when I get into the splits and such. So yeah, I think that was my greatest achievement as a manager, is just sort of getting to the point where we weren't just a fluke, and we'd done all the hard graft, and
Yeah,
we won the
mhm.
tournament. So Yeah.
Yeah. So, so you mentioned that you'd been managing in the CWL, you manage in the Benelux League as well. But what originally brought you or drew you to the UK scene?
I think it was more a case of I I really liked I'm a huge fan of sort of like local talent, and I'm a huge fan of the UK in general, right? Kind of have to be, right, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't have to have been forced into it by any means.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
just thought to myself, I'm doing a lot of work overseas, and I've worked with players from Russia, I've worked for Bulgaria, I've done the craziest places of the world. I've had relations, and I've worked with them in league. But I just thought to myself, it would be so cool if I could sort of work with players who are on my time zone, have the same sort of mannerisms. There's a different connection, UK to UK, and I just wanted to be a
Yeah.
part of that scene. And yeah, and luckily, for a little while, I did manage to do that. It didn't quite work out, but again, it doesn't mean it's done forever. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's how I suppose. I just quite like the UK scene.
Yeah. So you're a big fan of the good old British humor, good old British conversations that we have.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair,
Lover
even
of
the
the culture.
UK, yeah, we've got we haven't got 100% tea drinker ratios even on the UK teams. So
Yeah.
it's still a great mixing pot. But I just like, for example, the finals in London, right? This is exactly why I could literally catch a train for 2 hours and I would be in the epicenter of the finals, and I could sort of live it with the teams doing it their
Yeah. Yeah.
thing. Whereas if there was a finals in quite a faraway place, it could cost me hundreds and hundreds of pounds to get there. Not to mention the disconnect from the squad in that sense as well. If I wasn't able to, when there's walls that get built up, and I just feel like with the UK scene, and I've got no
Yeah.
preference to any regions because, like I said, I've worked with absolutely everyone I can, and I will continue to do so. But I just thought to myself, I just wanted to be in the middle of it all, and that's where sort of like the UKL stood out to me.
Yeah. 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 So, you talked briefly earlier about some like you're a very vibes based person, especially within your competitive teams. Uh, how have some of the environments in the teams been over your career? What would you say? Are they all like the vibey kind of teams that you like, or are some maybe a little bit more serious? And is that maybe not your kind of thing?
I think the energy of a team is basically the heartbeat of the team. If people leave a session and they think I've enjoyed and I want to do more, it's a winning sort of formula. But
Yeah.
again, it's the climate can change so quickly from a bad scrim block, a bad week, a bad month, and as soon as doubts start to settle in, it is quite hard to weed it out and really put things back on
Yeah.
track. So you've kind of got to take seriousness with fun now. I've learned the hard way because obviously,
Yeah.
running a team, I think is one of the coolest things that I can do, right? But I need to be responsible about it because at the same time, players are looking at me for structure. They're looking at me for games quality, and I think a lot of people walk into this space thinking that it's just going to be a bit of a careless club. But the more that I've put work on how I manage teams, the more responsibilities I've realized most people might overlook, and I've certainly sort of improved. But yeah, it's not always rosy, sadly.
Yeah.
But I mean, for the most part, I'd say it's a good 80-20. For the most part, like 80% of it is an absolute blazing good time, not overly serious. But then the 20%, you do need to be serious sometimes, and sometimes players have to be swapped out, be it through life events, be it through various things. But
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
it can be quite emotional for everyone involved. So it's a delicate balancing act for sure.
Do you have any personal tactics that you employ when it comes to dealing with perhaps these like a few bad apples in the bunch, right?
Yeah, and I mean, it's not really an appropriate saying, but it still resonates with me, is business personal. When you start a team, it has to be seen as business, and personal can really get in the way of making good choices in that sense. So you have to like separate yourself almost from your sort of like, I don't know, your lovey-dovey side to your like what needs to happen so that this ship doesn't sink. And
Yeah.
and sometimes that decision is easier when you think of it as a business decision versus this guy's going to hate me afterwards. What can I do to make this less? You have to really just
Yeah.
make sure that everyone else gets the message, and you you're not seen as weakness, I suppose, because if things happen and decisions have to be made, and that's the key takeaway is like business personal and finding that balance. And
Yeah.
I've really struggled with that over the years
Yeah.
because I'm a personable guy, and I get really I get deep
Attached.
in the teams.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do, and I look, they're an extended family to me. Every team that
Mm.
I've been in, and I'll do anything for any of the players. But at the same time, there are lines that have to be drawn up, and
Yeah.
once
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
crossed, I have to be a different beast to write things. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So, you briefly mentioned about you being a very personable person. You like to have a good connection with your players. What is it like managing your own personal life outside of esports with your commitments inside of esports, with managing, casting, and stuff like that? And do you have any like sort of support structures around you that assist you in like maybe you've had a bad cast or maybe you've had a bad like series and you need to just unwind? Do you tell me a little bit about that?
100%. I mean, there's days where you kind of just think, not now, but the show must go on. So, I mean, at that point, you kind of lean into anything that you've got in place. I know with teams, I kind of nominate a captain so that in the event that I stumble, there's something moving forwards at all times. And also, I've elaborated recently on sort of coaching and stuff like that. So there's a little bit more structure to my teams. But I mean, with casting, um, the UCal are my casting friends. I mean, Rob's amazing. Like I love Rob to bits, and he's he'll say things, and the scene is really nice. Like sometimes when you finish a cast, and you can just say to the guys you worked with, "Hey, does anybody want to do a little VOD review about this in like a few days' time?" And it's just you just kick back with grab a drink, and you just talk about the pros and cons of the cast, what could have changed, what could have been covered better, details missed, and it's accepting that in a good critic
Yeah.
kind of way, and you
Yeah.
always build on that. So I've got the networks there, but I mean IRL, it's tricky, man, because I'd argue if you walked into a pub or if you walked into a social setting and said, "I run an esports team," I think about 95% of the room wouldn't know what that was.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's more like partner support then, where I lean into my partner, and she'll look out for me if I'm having a stressful week and such. But my boys, my IRL friends as well, they kind of know what I'm into. So when things get rocky, I've got a few
Yeah.
outward sort of avenues. But yeah, it's trickier though with
Yeah.
the sort of like outside of the PC sort of crisis management
Yeah.
because you are
Yeah.
quite solo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. So talking roughly about that. You mentioned like the support that you get from like your friends and stuff outside of the game. Um, and also like the way that the casters talk to each other about their the casts. That sounds a lot like me from my experience. That sounds a lot like how a team operates. When they're doing VOD reviews over a game. So, do you think that that is something that more people should do in the casting scene, or maybe that's something that new casters should be open to exploring?
I think, yeah, I think if you're not doing it, start because it you kind of get so consumed by your own performance then that you don't really, if I'm doing play by play, sometimes I won't think about the optimal handoff to the color caster, or maybe I'll jump in at the wrong time, or
Yeah.
maybe they had more to say. There's loads of stuff that I would be sort of. I know it sounds a bit weird, but it's kind of like if you look at a photograph, the first thing you do is just stare at yourself. And that's what you'd do on a VOD on your own. You don't even
Yeah.
notice what's going on. Whereas if you've got others there, they can kind of take your gaze off the obvious and help you really learn things. So yeah,
Yeah.
again, it is very comparative to a team environment. You're right, and yeah, everyone should do it for sure.
Yeah. So we are coming towards the end of the podcast now. Is there anything you wanna talk about? Anything that's on the top of your mind that you think esports could do with knowing?
Yeah, I guess I'll fork back the casting because like I genuinely believe these tournaments and such have just got such an important role to play in the future esports in general, right?
Yeah.
Because there's this massive divide at the minute, okay, where you've got pro versus non-pro, and the jump is astronomical. We're talking,
Yeah.
a handful of people get through. It's kind of like making a career out of music. Not, there's a million singers, but not everyone's going to be Beyonce. Not everyone's going to be, AAA.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's really important that we have the tournaments and the structures and everything in place for people who aren't going for the AAA but are definitely better than sort of like Joe Public to really thrive
Yeah.
and sort of fight it. And I think that's what the UCAL has achieved. And I'm super passionate about my work, other team managers' work. Meeting up with them in London recently at that event, and it has really compounded the fact that we are absolutely critical in maintaining the esports scene and space in the UK. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's an important aspect for sure.
So you just mentioned about not everybody has aspirations to go like to the top tier of pro, right? So do you think there's anything that maybe Riot or like maybe us as a community could do to maybe shorten the massive jump there is between pro and non-pro?
I think it's difficult to say because there is definitely a ladder all the way, but there are definitely people fighting in Division 1 right now who won't want to push further than Division 1. They're kind of doing
Yeah.
it for the love of the game. So it's kind of strange. The rising stars will definitely work their way up the ladder, and we have seen people go from the UCAL to bigger teams to sign contracts and such. So
Yeah.
they have actually made it in essence. But I mean, you can shine and you can be a celebrity within this small space, and then you can push on if you want to push on. That there will be team opportunities, but it's just having a really credible, strong tournament where you can essentially use that as your reference as a player. That's enough for me. Because if somebody like aces Division 1 and then they shoot big for a big ticket team and
Yeah.
they say, hey, you know UCAL? They're like, of course we know UCAL. Well, I've just won Div 1 and I'm one of the best players. Do you want to work together? And I think that
Yeah.
it's our job to keep UCAL super credible, super competitive, and an aspiration for everyone.
So in a sense, what you're saying is that all of the minor ERLs, using the example of the UKL, should try and expand their notability, I guess, to then hopefully shorten that gap between pro and give more people more opportunities. Is that the kind of thing you're on about?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you saw NLC. That's only a couple of rungs above the likes of, CWL, Valence. You've got UCAL. You've got, all of the tournaments that are on the way up. And I mean, they had phenomenal coverage. Everybody was talking about Los Ratones when they were in the split.
Oh yeah,
And I
yeah,
mean, we're talking about, teams that had that overnight sort of fan base form. So,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, every single league wants to be the league. And it's just being humble, working together so that we can promote esports competitiveness versus sort of trying to bring each other down and just making sure that, yeah, every single time, if somebody does really good in Div 3, that they've got a fantastic opportunity to work it up to 2, 1, and
Yeah,
so on and so forth. So, yeah, I think it'd be good that way for sure.
yeah. Oh, well, that's really interesting to hear. So, sadly, that is all I have time for this episode. I would like to have a massive thank you to Unfazed for joining me and spending a little time out of his day to come on this podcast. Is there anything else you want to say?
No, thanks so much for having me on. It's been a
Yeah.
blast.
Well, thank you so much, guys, for watching the 6th episode of the In the Weeds podcast, and I will be back with the next one soon.